Good morning, Melanie from Immortel Counseling and Coaching. Today's video is actually inspired by one that a couple of my friends did, Coach Dennis at manoflegacy.org and Dr. Charlie from Dashcam Wisdom. The video that I am referring to, I will actually link it below, but the video I'm referring to is one in which they were discussing the positives, the good things that have come out of COVID, and your mindset, and how you really can't see them without changing your mindset. So, it's actually really cool. There have been some very cool things that have come out of COVID, despite all of the bad. Because yes, there has been some bad. We're not going to dismiss or ignore that. Um, but a lot of it is about your mindset. And it made me start thinking about a story that I use with my clients quite frequently when they're just having a hard time finding anything good about their lives. So many years ago, my kids were about 12, so that I think that would have put it right at 10 years ago. My mother had a really bad accident, and there were many broken bones and internal injuries and traumatic brain injury and all of that. And she was in the hospital for 4 months. And I was at the hospital with her every stinking day because she made it very clear she wanted my help in making decisions. She knew she wasn't thinking clearly. And it was a pretty big deal for her to have been there for 4 months. All the medical records didn't follow her properly from department to department, so that made it more challenging as well because she had a lot of pre-existing health issues prior to all of this. Anyway, at the time, I was running a business. I was at the hospital with her every stinking day. I think I spent like maybe $3,000 in parking fees for the garage when I couldn't find parking elsewhere. I mean, because I was up there multiple times a day, and just like it was really insane. So anyway, there were a lot of issues. I was running a business. I was homeschooling one of my kids who packed his schoolwork up and took it to the hospital with us every day. So he sat in a hospital room to do his schoolwork every day for months on end. For a 12-year-old, that's a pretty heavy deal. And man, I just remember how exhausted and hopeless and despairing I was. And how there were days that I would wake up and think, if I don't find some kind of positive, something to live for today, something to drag me out of bed, I'm just staying here in bed all day. And there were some mornings that the only positive that I could think of was I woke up. I guess that's a positive. It was a really difficult time. So lots and lots of stress. It was kind of crazy. But as I started shifting my mindset to the more positives that I could find, I started noticing some positives that were coming out of the situation. My mother and I started repairing our relationship, which was kind of a big deal because we'd had a really rough relationship for most of my life. I started seeing her as someone that wasn't just my mom. We don't always get to understand who our parents are until we see them from someone else's perspective. And her friends rallied around and, told me things about my mother that I never knew. Things that she did for other people and stuff like that. My mother was able to mend some relationships with other people And when she eventually passed, it left them with a sense of peace about it. One of the big things that came from this situation was my son absolutely blossomed under these incredibly difficult circumstances. He's 12 years old, sitting there in a hospital room doing his schoolwork. And when the doctors came by to do their rounds and I was not in the room, he was able to stand up and advocate for my mother with all of the information that he'd been listening to me daily discuss with the doctors. And I was so proud of him, because this is a child who was kind of a wilting flower previous to this. And he just turned into this exceedingly competent young man who could talk with doctors on a very proficient level, using correct medical terminology, at his level, and things like that. And it was really, really cool to hear him do this. And I talked to him about that and told him that I was just so impressed with him. And as far as I was concerned, he was grown up. And that actually caused him to kind of cry a little bit. And we bonded over that. And, there were some really good things that came out of it. I got some closure on situations with my mom. And my mom, was able to say some things that she'd never had the courage to say before, because we knew that the situation was pretty dire. It's funny how sometimes the dire situations gives you a little extra courage. But, that was what I was thinking about as I was watching Dr. Charlie and Dennis talk about the positives that have come from COVID. I know that I've definitely had a positive or two that has happened for me. And, I have found something that I never thought that I would ever find in my life. And that's in another person. And so that is my positive out of COVID. So whatever the situation is, there is never a situation that is so dire that you can't find some kind of silver lining, even if that silver lining is, I woke up today. Or, okay, a lot of things have happened, but I haven't gotten COVID yet. We're knocking on wood on that one. There's something, no matter how small it is, and no matter how insignificant it seems, if it is positive, hold on to that. Because when you start holding on to the small positives, it helps shift your thinking into a more positive mindset overall. And you can start finding more positives and figuring out how to turn situations from 100% negative to at least 10% positive, 50% positive, and maybe they don't completely weigh each other out, like cancel each other out, but that's okay. As long as you're learning and growing and trying to hold on to that positive mindset, you're going to do great, and you're going to get through it, and you're going to find strengths that you never knew you had. So those are my thoughts today, just kind of in response to Dennis and Charlie. And, I encourage you to go check their channels out. It's Man of Legacy and Dashcam Wisdom. And, they've got some really great stuff over there on their channels. So someday I may catch up to them and be as polished and... Who am I kidding? They're not polished. No, now I'm just poking at them. So anyway, check them out. And I will link the one video below. And I will talk to y'all soon.